What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we will be looking at the top 5 janky build-arounds from the Streets of New Capenna. Welcome to the Streets of New Capenna. There's all kinds of fun stuff to be had, and we are going to be looking at the more casual side of it today. Now, if you're wondering, when I say janky build-arounds, what exactly am I referring to? Well, the Macmillan Dictionary defines jank, well, they have the best definition of jank I was able to find on the internet, and that is horrible and disgusting. If you are looking for horrible and disgusting decks that are capable of producing weird, insane mechanics or weird, insane moments on the battlefield that make your opponent go, what is happening? Then this is the video for you. If you're looking for more competitive content, I would highly recommend you check out the Pizza Box MTG channel. There's going to be a link to that in the description. That is a great place to go for metagame breakdowns, analysis of successful decks, as well as information on upcoming tournaments. So please check them out. It'd be fantastic. But if you're looking for more janky brews, interesting gameplay, and weird interactions that make the game of Magic so interesting and bizarre, please hit that subscribe button. It would make a huge difference, and I'd appreciate it very, very much. So let's go ahead and jump right into the 5 best janky build-arounds from the Streets of New Capenna. And before we get to the list proper, I do have some honorable mentions, as well as a couple of dishonorable mentions that I do want to get into. So let's jump right into it. So we've got 2 honorable mentions for you, the first of which is Luxior Giada's Gift. Now, I know what you're thinking. Graham, this is a card that is capable of turning planeswalkers into creatures, and that produces some crazy weird things. And not only do they become creatures, they stop being planeswalkers. That's insane. The jank build-around potential on this card is so high. How is this not on the list? Well, it's not on the list for one very simple reason. I think this card is really, really, really good. I think this card can see competitive play. I do believe it is going to be in decks that are trying to actually win and not necessarily pull off janky shenanigans. There will be decks there will be janky build-around decks that do fun things with Luxior, so please don't hesitate to give it a try. But I believe this card is genuinely powerful. It's not just a fun janky build-around. This is the real deal. And so as a result, I want to give it a shout out here as a fun card where you can definitely do some weird janky combos. Creating a planeswalker creature gives you some weird things you can do, like make copies of planeswalker creatures, and you do all kinds of you get multiple loyalty ability triggers and those types of things. So Luxior is a very, very cool card. It has a lot of potential in weird decks, but I also think it has what it takes to just be an excellent Magic card. So don't hesitate to craft it. Don't hesitate to build around it. Don't hesitate to jump right on in with it, regardless of what style of gamer you are, regardless of if you're looking for weird janky stuff or you're looking to win games. I think Luxior is the real deal. And so as a result, I didn't put it on this list because I wanted to give some of the lesser known, lesser appreciated cards a chance to shine. But Luxior Giada's Gift is absolutely fantastic. And the other one that I have on this, the other honorable mention for today, is actually in a similar boat, and that is Halo Fountain. I think Halo Fountain is a very cool janky build-around card. However, it is also just a really good Magic card. The first 2 options give you an opportunity to untap creatures that have tap effects. That can be incredibly powerful. Being able to double up tap effects. The reason that a creature has tap associated with an ability is because Wizards really doesn't want you to use that ability multiple times in a turn. So the fact that Halo Fountain gives you that opportunity is absolutely fantastic. You can also combine it with creatures like the Gitrog monster, Horror of Zava, as well as Reservoir Kraken or Clackbridge Troll. These cards that have these weird drawbacks, but they tap if your opponent just does a thing. You can use Halo Fountain to untap them and attack. So that's fantastic. You can do some really cool things with that. Not to mention being able to just produce tokens on a whim for almost no cost. Frankly, the cost is kind of a benefit. And then being able to draw cards with this for only 2 and untapping 2 of your creatures. I mean, it draws a card for 2 in a recursive fashion. That's fabulous. You can do some really cool things with that. And the possibilities for really long or potentially infinite combos with this definitely exist. So I think this card is absolutely legit. Now, you'll note the janky build-around part of it is that last ability. Untap 15 tap creature control, you win the game. That's jank. Being able to win with that is going to be incredibly difficult in a scenario where you don't win with combat damage. Because when you have 15 creatures on board and they are tapped, you're probably already winning the game. It's just being, and given how many synergies and payoffs there are for having a lot of creatures on the board, like anything with Jetmir's name on it comes to mind, and then you don't need this card to win in those decks. But if you do want to do fun, weird build around shenanigans with this, you absolutely can. And I think that this is going to, there will be some fun jank decks built around Halo Fountain, so please don't write it off. But again, I feel like it's the real deal. I think this card is actually going to see, I don't know about tournament play, but it's going to be on the ladder. You're going to run into it because those first two abilities are way stronger than they look. So keep that in mind. Now, I do have some dishonorable mentions. There are a couple of cards that look like they should be fun janky build-arounds, but I'm telling you, even in the world of janky build-arounds, they are a trap. And the first one that we are talking about is Evolving Door. Do not craft this. If you open it in a pack, be sad. That's the only reasonable response. This card reads like it should be a birthing pod. And it's not. It just isn't. This is a bad tutor. This looks like it should be Birthing Pod when in fact it's Instrument of the Bards. It is not going to get you where you want to be. It is too expensive, too restrictive, and at the end of the day, it's just a tutor. It just puts a card into your hand. Granted, you can tutor up a lot of cool things with this, but you have to sacrifice a creature and have a 4-mana investment in order to do it. Not worth it. This is not worth it. Period. I don't know what else to say. Evolving Door is not where it's at, and to be honest, I really dislike the design on this card because it reads like it should be good, and it's just not. So do not fall victim of the Evolving Door trap. And the last dishonorable mention on our janky build-around list is one that you'll probably see coming if you've been keeping an eye on the spoilers, because it reads like it should be a really cool jank build-around. Well, no, let me rephrase that. It reads like jank build-around is the only way to make this card work in any capacity that's even remotely fun. And I'll tell you what, the card is so bad that even in that context, it just doesn't work. Don't bother, it's not worth it. And that is Meeting of the Five. I'm gonna go ahead and read this one out because I think it reads like it should be really cool and really powerful, but it's just not there. 3 and then Wooburg, white, blue, black, red, green. Exile the top 10 cards of your library. You may cast spells with exactly 3 colors from among mana this turn. Add double Wooburg to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast spells with exactly 3 colors. Now, you can use that mana to cast spells out of your hand or out of exile that are exiled with things like Urabrask, so that's something, but at the end of the day, the restriction of only playing cards with 3 colors is far, far, far too restrictive. In older formats, you do have access to ultimatums, so that could be interesting, but in that situation, I'd rather just run 4 ultimatums and just hit one of those rather than Meeting of the Five. It's just way too restrictive, and the mana that you get is even limited. If it said, you know, you may cast only cards exiled with 3 mana, but here's a bunch of mana for your mana pool, do with it whatever you want, different story. That could be amazing. Or if it said, you know, exile the top 10 cards, here's the mana, go nuts. Like, I don't see the need. The restrictions of only 3 colors, it gives you access to the guild leaders, it gives you access to the ascendancies. Okay, it gives you access to a lot of the rare, or the there's a whole series of hybrid uncommons in this set, and rares for that matter, that are hybrid with all 3 in the casting cost in one way or another. Like Evelyn the Covetous comes to mind. Like, that could be an option with this. So, but it's just so expensive. Paying 8 mana to potentially only get 5 or 6 mana worth, or 6 or 9 mana worth of value, whatever the case may be, it's just not good. You have to jump through way too many hoops, and the payoff isn't worth it. Is really what it comes down to. It's too expensive, and the payoff's not worth it, which is really a shame, because these family heads are really cool, imposing figures, and the idea of all of them kind of getting together on some kind of parlay situation is a really evocative idea. And it's just, yeah, this doesn't get there. It looks like it should function similarly to Niv Mizzet Reborn, because Niv Mizzet Reborn fills your hand with 2 color cards that don't share color types. Like, basically, you draw cards for each guild that you hit. And in Niv Mizzet Reborn, it works because we're looking at a 6/6 flyer for 5 that happens to be in Wooburg colors that also reloads your hand. They don't go into exile. They're not impulsive. You get them, and you get to play with them for the rest of the game. Whereas Meeting the Five, you only get access to the cards on this turn, and the mana that you get is limited to only cards with 3 colors. It's just not good enough. Just even in jank brews, like, good luck trying to make it work. I will probably try to make it work, because I want to be wrong on this card. I really do, but I think myself, as pretty much everybody on Twitter, is in agreement that this card is just not where it's at, which is unfortunate. So those were our honorable and dishonorable mentions. Now let's get into the top 5 list itself for fun janky build-around cards in New Capenna. Number 5 on our list is Body Launderer. So this is a 3/3 Death Toucher for 4 that says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, Body Launderer connives, which means you draw a card, discard a card. If you discarded a non-land card, you put a +1/+1 counter on Body Launderer. And then it also says when Body Launderer dies, return another target non-rogue creature card with equal or lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield. In a reanimator deck, you need 3 things. You need a big bomb worth reanimating, you need a way to get it into the graveyard, and you need a way to pull it out. Body Launderer is 2 of those 3 things. The connive is a great way to fill your yard. So it helps get your graveyard full while also massaging your hand. You'll love to see it. Who doesn't love a good hand massage, am I right? And then you also have, when it dies, you return a creature card with lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it reanimates upon its death. So in an aristocrat style strategy where you have sacrifice outlets, which you're gonna have in this set, there are tons of cool sacrifice outlets. Body Launderer has a way of getting threats into your graveyard as well as pulling them out. Now, you do need to be aware of the power of Body Launderer and the power of the threat you're trying to reanimate. That's gonna be a very difficult dance to dance, because you need to make sure the Body Launderer's power is greater than whatever you're reanimating. So just jamming a Toxrill, which happens to be a 7/7, into the graveyard, you're probably not going to be able to get it out with Body Launderer, at least not without doing a ton of work. Not impossible, but going to be very difficult and much harder to use than a traditional reanimation spell like Diagraph Rebirth or Graveyard Shift. Those are going to be much more reliable in that situation. However, if you need to pull up a Raffine or I'm trying to think of another good low power creature, frankly, even a Velomachus that has only 5 base power wouldn't be that hard to get to with Body Launderer, which would be pretty great. Being able to reanimate Velomachus would be pretty sweet with this. I do love me a good Velomachus. So I think Body Launderer is a really cool reanimation spell on a body, and it's a 3/3 Death Toucher. So it's going to be, this thing can tangle in combat. Your opponent needs to deal with it if they plan on attacking you. So that's just fantastic. This gives me vibes of City Stalker Connoisseur, which was also a 3/3 Death Touch for 4 in black. Now, granted, City Stalker Connoisseur hated on your opponent's hand and gave you a blood token. The conniving here is very similar to that blood token in that it can help fill your graveyard, but Body Launderer has the death trigger, whereas Connoisseur has the ETB. But yeah, I think Body Launderer, it could have been rare, I think. Like at Mythic, it's very strong. But there's going to be a lot of cool combos and cool interactions that people are going to come up with this card, especially used alongside other reanimation style shenanigans. Like another one that comes to mind is Riveteer's Ascendancy. Being able to reanimate cards every time a card dies with Body Launderer, that could get out of hand incredibly fast. And it's very interesting that Body Launderer is associated with the Obscura family because of the connive. Meanwhile, its abilities seem to align very closely with the Riveteers or the Maestros, in that we want to be sacrificing stuff that's very Maestros, and we want to be pulling stuff out of our graveyard, because we want our creatures to work tirelessly, which is very Riveteers. So I find those two things very interesting. But because it's mono black, it can fit in all of those. If you want to go hard connive, you can do that. If you want to go hard reanimator, you can do that. If you want to go more aristocrat style, where you have a lot of small creatures and you want to be able to sacrifice them for value and recur them out of your graveyard over and over again, you can do that here too. I think Body Launderer is a very cool, very versatile card, and it fits a number of strategies because of just how much it does. So I think this card is gas. I can't wait to get my hands on it. And let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is Soul of Emancipation. This is a 5/7 for 7. Note, it only has 5 power, so Body Launderer could reanimate it pretty comfortably. Just saying. But it is a 5/7 avatar for 7. 4 green, white, blue. When Soul of Emancipation enters the battlefield, destroy up to 3 other target non-land permanents. For each of those permanents, its controller creates a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. So this is Terastodon. We've seen Terastodon in the past where it was an elephant that when it entered the battlefield, you can blow up 3 permanents and create 3 elephants. It was very similar. This time, the fact that the bodies that it creates have flying is a much bigger threat. So if you're going up against somebody who has a lot of threats on the board, you don't necessarily want to just jam Soul of Emancipation, blow up their 3 things, because you're going to give them 9 power in the air. That's a big deal. So what I want to do with Soul of Emancipation, and why it is on this list, is I want to put it in a deck that is capable of cluttering the board with irrelevant tokens, like a lot of treasure tokens or blood tokens or any small creatures that I don't care about, and be able to hit Soul of Emancipation and then hit Teleportation Circle and be able to upgrade turn all of my treasure tokens into 3/3 angels. Add Giada to the mix, they all become much bigger angels. Life is good. So I feel like Soul of Emancipation has some cool implications, and if you can target your own things to create an army of angels, that could get really fun really fast. That feels almost like you have a Divine Visitation now, which is a historic card, but it's not quite there. And worst case scenario, if your opponent has an Oni called Anvil or a Lolth or something else is providing, or Kaito, something that's providing a lot of value on their side, you can turn it into a 3/3 angel, which can be nice. So you can create 2 angels yourself, give your opponent 1, eliminate their biggest threat, and you still have a 5/7 body on the board, and you now have angels. Like, it's not bad. You can do a lot of cool things with this. So I think in a Bant go wide creature token / treasure token situation, because there was a time when treasure tokens were restricted to certain colors, and that's just not the case anymore. Treasure tokens are wide open. Everybody gets them. So there's nothing stopping us from building a deck with a ton of treasure tokens and Soul of Emancipation, because that'll help us ramp into the Soul and then also give us some kind of payoff. Yeah, I think it's going to be super fun. I can't wait to get my hands on this, and I'm going to be flooding the board with angels really, really fast. Now, you do have to have permanents on board to destroy, but also notably, it's a destroy effect. So you would get any death triggers that are on your creatures. Just saying. But the downside of that is it would also give your opponent any death triggers that they have on their creatures, like their Corpse Launderer by chance. That's not necessarily a good target for Soul of Emancipation, because they'll be able to pull something out of the graveyard. But I think this card is very cool. It's a 7-drop. It's 5/7. I'm going to be reanimating this. I'm going to be ramping into this. We're going to get nuts. And a lot of Soul of Emancipation shenanigans are going to be occurring. And like I said, with Teleportation Circle, you get that trigger every single turn. And so being able to reshape the board into an angelic wonderland for you is pretty cool. I like the possibilities very, very much. So that was number 4 on our list. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 on our list is Public Enemy. Public Enemy is a very weird card. It fits Commander very, very nicely, but I believe there is a place in Standard for this card as well. Public Enemy is an aura for 3, 2 and a blue, that says all creatures attack enchanted all creatures attack enchanted creature's controller each combat if able. When enchanted creature dies, you draw a card. So regardless of who controls the creature, when it dies, you, the owner of Public Enemy, draw the card. That's nice. And one of the easiest ways to take advantage of this is in Commander. You staple it onto a creature that's the biggest threat, the biggest threat on the board. Whoever is arch enemy, you put Public Enemy on one of their things, and everybody has to go after them. So that's nice. That's very cool. That's the easy, obvious way to use this. What I want to do with this is I want to find a way in Standard, or possibly Historic, to create a board state that is very inhospitable. I want to have a lot of death touch creatures. I want to have a lot of high toughness creatures, a lot of a situation where my opponent does not want to swing in. I want to make it very, very difficult for them to get in for any damage, and make it so that they don't want to attack. And then I want to put Public Enemy on one of my creatures. And so what happens is then they have to swing at me with everything they've got, which is going to tap down their whole board unless they have Vigilance. And then my creatures will be able to trade with theirs in ways that really suck for them, which is exactly what I'm looking for. You know, we want to ruin their day by making them attack into us. And if the public enemy creature in the process dies, we draw a card. Nothing wrong with that. So I can totally see myself putting this on a little 1/1 Death Toucher, or maybe this is in a Simic Finn the Fangbearer deck where it's all Death Touch creatures. Maybe it's that simple, and then also add in something, or maybe we can go Sultai, add in something like Morbid Opportunist to draw cards. Like, I think Public Enemy is a really cool design. Forcing your opponents into bad attacks it can be very, very valuable. We've also seen a number of cards, especially in red, that say this creature must be blocked if able. We also have cards like Taunting Elf way back in the day where it like must be blocked by all creatures if possible. And what those cards at least have taught me over time is that forcing bad combat on your opponent can win you the game. And Public Enemy forces a bad combat situation on your opponent. Now, you have to build your deck to be able to withstand a hit, because them attacking all is a problem. Like, that is a situation that may be an issue. And if their board state is wide enough, or if they have enough tramplers, like, it may not be good enough. Maybe the downside of Public Enemy is that your opponent might be in a situation where they wanted to attack all anyway, in which case it's not really giving you any impact. But if your opponent is trying to set up a combo, or they're trying to establish a situation where they have one or two creatures and they're very important, like say they have a Hinata and you've got a Reach Death Toucher online, or another flyer that's bigger, they don't want to attack with that. They want to hold it back and be able to take advantage of it. But Public Enemy makes them put that card in harm's way. I like that. I think the possibilities here are, I don't want to say endless, but there are a lot of cool possibilities with this card. And I think it's neat, and it's definitely a fun, janky build around. So that was number 3 on our list. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2 on our janky build around list is Toulouse Clever Conductor. This is a 3/1 legendary human rogue creature with an interesting mana cost. The total mana value is 3. It is hybrid white-blue, blue, hybrid blue-black. So you can run it in mono blue, you can run it in Azorius, you can run it in Dimir, or you can run it in Esper. There's lovely flexibility here. And on top of that, for the purposes of Commander, it does give the whole Esper color pie to you as far as the color identity of your commander is concerned. Not bad. All right, so when Toulouse Clever Conductor enters the battlefield, it connives. Love connive. That is such a good ability. And then whenever you discard one or more cards, exile them from your graveyard. When Toulouse dies, put the cards exiled with it into their owner's hand. So this is like a better bag of holding. This feels like a better bag of holding. It also gives me some Bomat Courier vibes, because you just tuck cards away under it and then you draw them later. It's very, very valuable. The other cool thing about this is you can run it in Dimir, and it has 3 power. There are a lot of cards with Casualty in the Maestro's colors and Grixis that care about power, and having 3 power available is kind of a big deal for a good chunk of them. So that's nice. You can do some neat things with this. Neat sacrifice stuff in order to get the cards that you've exiled, that you've exiled with this card. The other cool thing is whenever you discard one or more cards, exile them from your graveyard. It does not say discard, or it doesn't say that it only impacts the cards that are connived. This is any card you discard. So if you have this in a Grixis deck, for example, and you hit Big Score or Unexpected Windfall, which are basically the same card, you can, you discard a card to that, and Toulouse just tucks it away for later. And then you get the other benefit of the Big Score or Unexpected Windfall, and life is good. At any point, one of the things with Toulouse that I would highly recommend is have sacrifice outlets handy. Have a Dockside Chef or have a Deadly Dispute ready to go just in case. Or a Little Chat is another great one from Streets of New Capenna. That could be a very, very valuable sacrifice outlet, because if your opponent attempts to exile Toulouse with a with something like Rite of Oblivion, you do not get the cards and they're gone forever, and that's definitely a bummer. At the end of the day, this card, in any situation where you're discarding a number of cards, Toulouse reads to me like a strictly better Containment Construct. And Containment Construct was pretty rad. The ability to get your discarded cards back, and in this case, directly back into your hand. They're not exiled and you can play them till end of turn. You just draw them again. So if you've discarded 3 cards with Toulouse, you sacrifice Toulouse or they die in combat, and you just draw 3 cards back. Now, your opponent does know what they are because you discarded them face up, but still, like, it's just crazy good. Like, this reads to me like incredibly good card draw if you can meet the requirements. And frankly, I want to meet those requirements. I think this card is excellent. And you can also run it in mono blue, which is great. So if you have a looting effect, and all three of these colors have cards that allow you to discard cards for value. And so it just fits. And also, it just connive. Put it in your deck with lots of connive, and it's just free roll discard stuff. Now, notably, when you discard a card and it goes into exile with Toulouse, you do not get access to it in your graveyard, obviously. So if you're in a situation where you have flashback cards, maybe this isn't the best card for you. So when you're building your deck around Toulouse, I would encourage you to not put in flashback and not worry about reanimation, because your graveyard is actually going to be a very small resource. You will not have many cards in your graveyard because Toulouse just puts them back into your hand, which is ultimately where we want them to be most of the time. So I think this card is shockingly good. It is a cool ability that you can use some, build some cool discard synergies around to really take advantage of. I think Toulouse is great, and that's why it's number 2 on our list. And let's move on to number 1 on our list, which is, of course, Arcade Bombardment. Arcade Bombardment? Arcane Bombardment. Now, this card's a trap. This card's not good. Don't play this card unless you want to do janky shenanigans, in which case, let's go. And that's exactly what we're here for. So Arcane Bombardment is an enchantment for red. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. Then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana cost. This is like a weird Eye of the Storm situation. And so what you need to do a couple of things. You need to make sure that you have good, like, big, powerful cards in your graveyard. Your Magma Opuses, your Unexpected Windfalls, your in Alchemy, Elrond's Epiphany, those kinds of things. You want those in your graveyard so that Arcane Bombardment can pull them out. If you can get an extra turn card into your graveyard, like, the game's probably going to be over for your opponent really fast, because you need to have a lot of instants and sorceries. But if you have a lot of instants and sorceries, you get to create copies of a lot of instants and sorceries. And they add up, is the crazy thing. So you get an Unexpected Windfall on this thing. Every time you cast an instant sorcery, you also get a free Unexpected Windfall. That's fantastic. So that you're getting treasure tokens, you're getting all kinds of good stuff there. Now, it only triggers on the first instant or sorcery spell each turn, which is a little bit of a bummer. But that's okay. But when you do cast it, you do have the possibility of loading it under Arcane Bombardment so that the next time you go to cast a spell, you get all of those copies. So in a Spell Slinger deck, this could be really, really powerful. Now, I would highly recommend going with heavy control in this. You want to go, you may want to put in board wipes to have those in here to be able to recur board wipes against aggro opponents. That could be very, very powerful, and very, very good in that situation. But it's a 6-drop. This is a 6-mana do-nothing enchantment. That makes it jank territory. There's no question around it. You will not be seeing this in competitive play, I don't think. I would love to be proven wrong about that. But if you build the deck correctly, if you build a lot of value-based spells that aren't dead at any point, Arcane Bombardment is great. If you load something like a Deadly Dispute that requires you to have a sacrificial body on board, you may not be able to cast it with Arcane Bombardment, which would really stink. You don't want to run counter spells in here in this kind of deck. So when I say hard control, I mean control the board or hand disruption. Like something like a Check for Traps or a Duress could be quite good in here, potentially. I mean, it could be fine. So you want to keep that in mind. The other thing is it does not impact creatures or enchantments at all. So those are perfectly fine ways to control the board or even counter things without risking a counter spell or some other type of disruption that isn't going to be good on Arcane Bombardment. The reason that I say don't play counter spells with Arcane Bombardment is because if a counter spell gets locked under one of these, you cast a spell onto an empty stack, which is where it's going to be happening most of the time. Bombardment is going to fire, and it's going to give you the option of casting a counter spell, and your spell is going to be the only viable target for it. So it's just not a good situation. You're not getting any value from the copy, which is a real problem. Also note, it says whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn. It doesn't mean your turn or your opponent's turn specifically. It happens on either. So if you have instant speed interaction, you can actually instant speed rip a ton of cards with Arcane Bombardment that have been exiled previously. That's dope. You can do some crazy things with this. So at the end of the day, I'm going to see if I can build around this. I'm going to find a couple of big splashy spells and see if we could make it happen where we get a Magma Opus in our graveyard and then ramp into this and then get that Magma Opus under the Arcane Bombardment and just rip. And in order to get Arcane Bombardment working, you need a couple of things. You need a couple of big splashy spells that can get their way into the graveyard, but you also need small spells that can trigger Arcane Bombardment. Like, I want to have a Shock or a Spikefield Hazard, like a 1-drop that can just kick this thing off, because a Magma Opus for 1 is really what we're trying to do here, and it's possible. It's very possible. So I dig this. I think this is great. Oh, also another PSA: don't put Memory Deluge in that deck. Just don't do it. The card won't work if copied with Arcane Bombardment because 0 mana was spent to cast it. Keep that in mind. But yeah, so I think Arcane Bombardment is one of the best janky build-arounds from this set. It feels like a commander card, and that's exactly what I love about it. And I want to see if there's a way to make it work. I don't think the card's good, and that's exactly why it is number 1 on our janky build-around list for the Streets of New Capenna. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out till the end of the video. I appreciate it very, very much. Please don't hesitate to hit that like and subscribe button. It makes a huge difference. Helps feed the algorithm and let other people know what's going on here at the Hammox 42 channel. I appreciate that. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.